Hello and welcome to this presentation. We're going to get started in just a few minutes when we have a few more attendees. So sit back and prepare for the presentation. Hello, everyone. We are going to wait around a minute or two for some people who are just coming on. And I should start by saying good morning and good afternoon to wherever you are. And we're going to get started in just a few minutes. Thank you. All right. I see the number of participants the number is slowly slowing. So we're going to go ahead and get started today. So hello, my name is James Locus, and thank you very much for attending this webinar. Today, we have a terrific panel of speakers to discuss how Clearbit solves data trust issues with Mode and DBT. So with that, we're going to kick things off by first getting into our wonderful presenters. So first, we have Julie Beynon. Julie heads Clearbit's analytics team, beginning her career first in product marketing and operations. She finds herself today rooted in the world of data pipelines, uncovering data insights, and operationalizing data. When she's not building data models, Julie enjoys painting and brushing up on her French, and she gets along best with people who wear T-Rex t-shirts. So, round of applause for Julie. A quiet round of applause. Next up, we have Drew Bannon. Drew is the co-founder and chief product officer at Fishtown Analytics. Drew has built event collection systems that scale to billions of events per month, implemented Markov-based marketing attribution models on millions of dollars of marketing spend, and most importantly, he dreams in Network X graphics. Round of applause for Drew. And last but not least, we have Ben Stansel. He is the co-founder and chief analytics officer at Mode. Prior to Mode, Ben was an analyst at Microsoft and Yammer, where he helped lead product analytics. Ben also worked as an economic analyst at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace in Washington, D.C. Round of applause for Ben. So let's get started. And we'll start with our major announcement for the quarter, our data freshness integration with DBT. The integration services timestamp and origination data into Mode reports to encourage transparent data provenance. But the important thing, because not everybody may be exactly primed to the issue, so we want to provide a little bit of a primer. What is data provenance and why is it important? So we'll use a little bit of a scenario here. So imagine you're at a fancy restaurant. You order ham, and it matters to you if the animal was raised in a cage-free farm or in a factory farm. Here, the origin of the product matters. Now, imagine that the ham is served, but it smells just a little bit funny. Your first question is going to be, how long has it been sitting out? Or how fresh is your product? Now, the ham might still technically be edible, but it might not taste good. And fresher is generally better. That is data provenance. And why do we care about the origin and freshness of data? Well, for the same reason you care about the origin and freshness of your food. We need to trust that what we eat won't make us sick. And data provenance is about trusting that the data we will consume will help, not hurt our business. And companies that trust their data use their data. So the big lesson for today is never eat rotten data. And with our data freshness integration with DBT, we're working with our partners at Fishtail Analytics to develop a way to provide data provenance on Mode reports. Mode will surface DBT's metadata directly into the report's UI, and this allows users to keep tabs on the data freshness of source models, both at the report level and for each table used in the report. And this will be available for any person who is a paying customer of both Mode and DBT. So with that, I wanted to open it up first with a quick overview of DBT. So Drew, if you could tell us a little more about DBT, background yourself, as well as anything the customers and audiences might want to hear.
Right on. Thanks, James. Really excited to be here. Appreciate you having me on. My name is Drew Bannon. Julie and I share no relation despite our last name sounding similar. I didn't realize that until just now. We are the makers of data modeling software, DBT, here at Fishtown Analytics. When we talk about data modeling, the big idea is that source data is messy and not really ready to analyze as is. You need to go through a process of transformation or modeling to reshape that data into the format that you want to analyze it in. DBT comes equipped with a bunch of different capabilities around this, like documenting your data, testing that the data meets your assumptions, and overall kind of provides a workflow for building these data models. We're really excited about this integration. We think that a lot of times data quality can be a bit of a black box for the people that aren't really close to the data. And so through this work that we'll talk about in this integration, our hope was that we could provide a way to surface exactly data freshness, data quality information in context where people are going to consume that data. So that if the data is funny, if it's delayed, a few hours or a few days, you can know about that without pinging a data person on your team.
It's really good to hear. Really, really valuable. And I guess the next major question is, why did you decide to work with Mode? So what was the behind the scenes story and that led to really that value creation?
Yeah, I will tell you exactly what it was. We, of course, use DBT to model our own subscription data for DBT Cloud. We had an issue with our data ingestion process where we weren't landing new subscription information into the warehouse. And the way that we calculate churn is if we don't see a sort of payment for a subscription, we assume that customer didn't pay the bill and they've churned as a client. So one Monday we woke up and we started seeing all of our customers were churning, and it got worse and worse over a couple of days. But we knew that actually none of these companies were actually churning. We just weren't getting new payment information. So we thought, wow, wouldn't it be great if we could see kind of inline in this dashboard where we're looking at revenue and finance metrics, if we could see that the data was last loaded a week ago, it'd be very clear to everyone that we can kind of feel better about all the red we're seeing on this report. It's a quirk of the data quality, not of our business and imminent failure if it were true. So that was kind of the starting point. We thought about ways that we could address this inside of the DBT product. So DBT does know about how fresh your data is and how high quality it is. But ultimately, that wouldn't help someone who's looking at a report in an analytics tool. We really wanted to surface this information right alongside the report. That way, as a data consumer, you don't need to know how the data is built or deeply understand the provenance of your data to diagnose if a report is in good health or not. So we've had a close relationship with Mode Analytics for years and years now. And we kind of got together and thought about how this could work and how we could take this metadata powered by DBT and surface it right inside of the Mode Analytics product.
And that's actually a terrific segue into Ben. So, hi, how are you doing?
Hey, James, good to be here.
So, if you could talk about that relationship just a little bit.
Yeah, so we've always been big fans of Fishtown and DBT. We Mode is in sort of your analogy of the ham. We see Mode as the place where you consume the ham. We see Mode as the place for where all the people are like actually using that data. And so we've always been focused on kind of that layer of the analytics stack. Because there's a lot of great tools that can sit behind Mode, whether or not they're ingestion tools like Fivetran and Stitch, whether or not they're warehousing tools like Snowflake and Redshift and BigQuery, or whether or not they're transformation tools like DBT. Our belief was that when we first found DBT, it was kind of exactly the way that we thought about solving this transformation problem that Drew outlined, sort of very aligned with how we would have wanted it solved as analysts ourselves, but found that we kind of encountered the same problem that Drew was describing, that as the customers of that ham don't actually know what's happening in the kitchen. If DBT is the kitchen where this food is getting made, the people who are making the food kind of understand the freshness of it, but the people who are actually eating it don't. And so we constantly run into these issues where people would say like, hey, something looks wrong here. What's going on? And then you'd have to go back and kind of try to figure out what's up. And oftentimes it was some upstream issue, whether or not it was a DBT model wasn't up to date, or some ingestion model didn't load quickly enough. And so we want to try to help surface that information, for our solving our own problems, but also for customers, that way we can focus on the stuff that we believe we're good at around how do you actually consume that data, how do you analyze it, and having DBT begin to focus on the things that they're great at of transforming that data really efficiently, keeping that dependency model all in line, and doing that in a really robust way. So we saw ourselves as both having kind of the specialization exactly along the lines as where we wanted it, but we needed to be able to talk to each other. And so that's why we sort of want to pursue this integration. Is these are the right sort of architectural steps, we believe, but you still want to be able to communicate across these tools. And so this is the first step in that direction.
It's great, and it's a terrific product, and I guess that's why we have almost 40 attendees listening. Now, on to Clearbit. So, Julie, I hear you guys might have had a few issues, and I was wondering first, how were you first introduced to DBT, and also what problem were you trying to solve? In light of the benefits that Drew and Ben really spoke to.
Hi, yeah. So I'm a longtime DBT user, a longtime Mode user. I think for me, I'm not a super technical person. So I have, I can write SQL, but I'm not a data engineer. And so DBT let me own a data pipeline on my own with just SQL skills. And so it let a small kind of 40-person company have a 1-person analyst and be able to, provide reporting that you'd get from like a 5-6-person team. So that's where kind of my love for DBT and Fishtown started. And Mode to me is just this blank slate where I can go and I can create anything and I can report on that, and I have full control over my reports, and it's exactly as I like it. So I've been using both of those for 4+ years now. But one of the issues that we have is that they, prior to today, they didn't talk to each other. So DBT was always this magical black box of Julie loves to build DBT models. That's kind of how people saw things. It's like, there's this really nice table that I get to use. I have no idea how it's built. I have no idea when the last time it was updated. I just know that it exists. And so I think that it was this overly complex thing. And when you look at a report and it may not have had the data you thought it did, it was just hands thrown up in the air, complete frustration of, I don't understand it, it's wrong. And I have a very specific and almost kind of heartbreaking story about that, is that at Clearbit, we have a tool called Prospector. So inside Salesforce, you're able to kind of prospect out for new leads. And one of the things that our customers were asking for was a ROI report on Prospector. So we, took our time, got the data, actually sat with customers to validate that this data was right. We did everything to make sure that those numbers on the report matched exactly what we saw in the customer's instances. What happened was, as it happens for many of us, is that the source data stopped coming through. similar to the subscription story, it just stopped running, except the report didn't break because it wasn't failing. It's just that the data wasn't reloading. And one of our CSMs was getting ready for a meeting, looking at this and just realized like none of this made sense. But because there was no mode error that said it broke or anything that said that the report is broken, they sort of said, this report is broken. This report's wrong. The data is wrong, which I think any analyst on the call, that's probably your least favorite thing to hear is the data is wrong, because that just sort of eliminates all the trust for that report, for everything that you spent 3 weeks validating. You're on the calls, making sure the data is right, to hear the data is wrong. It's rather heartbreaking. And all it was the source data hadn't been refreshed, and the team had no access to that. The team couldn't see anything. All they could see was that it was wrong. And that meant that it took 6 months after the work we did to get the support out to finally get the team to trust it. And I still don't think it's where it was when it first came out. And the way that I found out that the team didn't trust it was just through a Slack channel of, hey, how do you use this report? Oh, I don't trust that report. And I just saw that in a Slack channel, and they were just like, no, I spent so long trying to make that right. And so what I think the freshness does for us, and that the ability is, it peels back that kind of curtain. It's like, hey, you can now troubleshoot this data. So instead of saying the data is wrong, you click on it and the CSM can look and go, oh, this data hasn't been updated in 7 days. That's what's wrong. The data source is broken. Not the data is wrong per se, the data source is broken. And I need to tell Julie that versus the dreaded, this report is wrong, which then gets me emotionally like distracted and you're like, what's wrong? So it frames the question differently. It gives the team the tools to actually troubleshoot, and people actually want to solve their own problems. The team doesn't like being in the dark about how this data is made. They don't like not knowing. So this surfaces that first bit of like, hey, by the way, the last time we saw new data was 4 hours ago. Cool, I'm happy with that.
That's an amazing story. Sorry about the heartbreaking part of it. I myself have definitely experienced something like that where you're going into a meeting and it's just wrong and you have to kind of just go with it. So I mean, hopefully that relationship repaired. Took a while. And with, definitely having this sort of integration really kind of relieves that pressure, hopefully, and provides that clarity. So
yeah, it's the first step in that communication between the team and like the understanding. It's that first step to just uncovering what's going on.
And I want to add one thing to that, which is that for data teams, trust is often all you have. That you're only as effective as people trusting you. That basically what you're telling people is they kind of believe one thing or see one thing or kind of to accomplish one thing, and you're saying, hey, let me show you what is actually happening. And that data is still not the real world. It is some like in your interpretation of the real world that you want to think is like always empirically exactly right. But people's belief in that view is only as much as they trust you. And so undermining that trust is like a tremendously damaging thing, because then not only is it like, hey, I don't trust this report anymore. It's kind of like, I don't trust this team anymore. I'm going to go back to thinking things the way I want to do them. That all you really have as a data team is trust. And so those moments where you can save it that way can be sort of saving. That is what's necessary to like keep the team effective, really.
So it's like one of those intangible things that really has a real world business consequence, right? Like, what is trust? Well, trust is that ability to say, hey, we can do something and it's going to make everybody better. And importantly, they don't have to double check things, right? So building that trust sounds like the most key thing. Yeah. So we have a brief break for a poll. So Nancy, if you could provide the poll to the audience, that would be great. So the poll is, how concerned are you about someone using inaccurate data in a report or dashboard? We're going to take about 30 seconds and the numbers are coming in really fast. 30 seconds to see how people respond to this. So I'll give you a few more seconds. Last 5 seconds. All right. So, how concerned are you about someone viewing or using inaccurate data in a report or dashboard? Very concerned. People are very, very, very concerned. And I suppose that's one of the reasons why you joined us today, audience members, for this presentation, because it's a major, major issue. So let me go ahead and you guys can see the results. And from that, so let's do a segue over to Drew. And really, going off of what Julie spoke to, so that question going from the CSMs, really using the data and then saying, hey, this is not correct, getting upset about it and kind of damaging that trust and taking a long time to regain. So how often, Drew, is this a problem from your own experience, from your experience as the creator of this product? So like, oh, sorry, we have snow here in Denver, so I think this whole big snow thing just fell off my roof.
Wow.
But yeah, Drew, how large of a problem is that based on your experience?
Yeah, I think this is a really big and universal problem. I bet every company that works with data has this problem in one way or another. When we talk about building trust and in general, that's not just true of data, that's true in all of our work relationships. And I always think about the phrase, you gain trust in drops and you lose it in buckets. So it's pretty quick that months and months of hard work can disappear if there's like kind of a loss of trust event. One thing I would say here is that we're not trying to solve this problem by being 100% accurate 100% of the time. Like, we're acknowledging that data is not going to load correctly. Things aren't going to work as you expect. Regressions will make their way into code. It's inevitable. And the thing that we're trying to do here is build a sort of more resilient, kind of, forgive me for saying it, but like anti-fragile approach to that happening, where actually bad data is an opportunity to create trust. And it's sort of the awareness from the data team and from the tools that you use that pushes this information out to you and says like, hey, hold on, let's pump the brakes. The data's not good right now. That is actually a trust building experience, even though like the data's wrong. So I think it's a sort of universal problem. I think this is a really neat way of trying to address it.
It's that transparency approach, really, right? So just the ability to see that it's wrong or maybe inaccurate or out of data or not fresh, that adds a whole new level of trust, because you can see that, oh, wow, there may be an issue here.
Totally. And, for anyone who has ever pulled up like the AWS or GCP status pages before, it's kind of a big problem when these things go down, but it's a much bigger problem when a service is down and the service is reporting that it's in good health. Even just seeing that red, X, this is in bad shape for whatever reason. It's like, you can act on that. You know what to do. You have policies and procedures. It's when you see nothing, when you see the green check mark, but it's not working, that you start to lose trust and confidence.
Yeah, makes sense. And I guess a quick segue to Mode. And so why did you, Drew, decide to work with Mode to actually see that we're the best solution to actually figure this problem out?
Sure. I talked about this a little bit at our DBT community conference, Coalesce, last December, in my talk, The Postmodern Data Stack. And we were like right in this headspace at the same time that Ben and I got together and started talking about this integration. The old school way of doing analytics is with an all-in-one tool that will ingest data, transform it, it will let you query it, and it has total information about the entire system. So we can just tell you like, here's when I loaded this data, or here's the current state of the data. But we have this kind of decomposed data stack these days, where your data stack will look like a data loader, a data warehouse, DBT, Mode Analytics. Maybe you do other types of BI or analytics and other tools, if it's R or Python, whatever it might be. And so there's just so much surface area and so many integration points where things can not work correctly, and they can have significant downstream impacts on all the other tools. And so I think that one of the reasons why it was so clear that Mode Analytics is the right product and company to partner with on this, is because we both really embrace this decomposed data stack and like understand how the different pieces fit together. And so there's just such a natural integration point where we can together create this sort of product experience that neither of us would be in a good position to build independently. Like, it needs to be a partnership, but I think it's the closeness of our two organizations and also our alignment on the viewpoint of the ecosystem that helped us get here.
And Ben, I guess if you could piggyback off that with a discussion of, like you mentioned, Drew mentioned the modular data stack. So how is that way of thinking about data infrastructure important?
Yeah.
Who was that? Sorry.
Oh, sorry, Ben. That was for Ben.
Yeah. So for a couple of reasons, I think it's really important. One is that as Drew said, there used to be kind of this all-in-one notion. And a lot of times they were sort of vertically integrated, where you should have your all-in-one thing for product analytics and your all-in-one thing for sales analytics and for marketing analytics. The things that people want to do with data now is so expansive that no one tool can actually do all of it. And the technology is moving fast enough. DBT has been around for I don't know, Drew, what, 4 or 5 years as a thing that's generally available, which isn't very long for it having the traction that it has and sort of changing the landscape to the degree that it has. And we'll certainly see more tools like that. And so to be able to take advantage of those things, this modularity lets you like pull in new technologies when they become available, which you couldn't do in an all-in-one tool. The other thing is you get this like integrations in like kind of this horizontal integration where you have an all-in-one warehouse and all-in-one transformation layer. You're able to actually work across the business in ways you can if like you do product analytics and Amplitude and you do, which is a great product, but you can't do sort of mix that with your sales analytics, your support analytics and those kinds of things. And so we believe in this kind of horizontal layering of the stack so that all of your data lives in one place. It's all modeled in a single place like DBT. There's a single point of access like Mode where you can consume it all. So that way organizations can sort of work more smoothly across departments, as well as actually using the technologies that are the appropriate ones that are now sort of developing at the rate that they're developing.
And I guess moving over, so the next question is actually more so towards Julie, because I know that you had those trust issues, right? And after this, we'll kind of open it up a little bit to the larger group. But Julie, do you believe that there's a discrepancy between the trust that you have in your data versus the trust that the stakeholders have? And if so, like, how do you go about bridging that distance?
Yeah. So I think when you work in it and you test it and you check it and you know it's right, it's easy to trust your data, but not everyone has access to that same information and that same ability to test it and validate it, and they don't have the time to, and I don't expect anyone to do that. So anytime there is, even as I shared in the example before, anytime there's something like that, it always nicks it just and brings it down, and opening up access to what I can see in the way that I troubleshoot helps kind of bridge that gap so we're as close to what I think and what they think. But yeah, I'm always going to say they're lower than I am because they don't have the same access to all the information that I do, and they don't spend the time testing it and validating it and checking it. And no matter how much you communicate, the second you get something wrong and it's unclear why it's wrong, it's always going to be lower than you.
I think there's actually Drew said something that I think that's an interesting question. Drew said something earlier that I think is actually a really interesting point here, which is I think that data teams probably trust data more than other teams, not because they think the data is better, but because they know what's wrong. Like, you know what's right because you know what's wrong. And it's not a matter of like saying, oh, we know the data is perfect. It's that it's not perfect, but you kind of know where it's not perfect. And I think that there's a lot of teams that have this, like, data has this kind of on a pedestal thing where like this data, it's numbers, it's right. Like it is the empirical truth. And working in it, it loses a little bit of that luster. It doesn't mean it's not valuable, but you recognize, hey, this is all kind of human generated. It's generated by machines that get things wrong. Like stuff goes crazy. But you know that. And to me, that's like one of the things that's interesting about this integration is, as Drew said, it's not about saying, hey, like we corrected all your problems. It's about being honest about what the problems are, because that honesty is what creates the trust much more so than like, hey, we solved everything, it's all perfect. It's not going to be perfect. And you do see that a lot with analysts. Like analysts are like sort of frustratingly caveated in their answers to questions of like, oh, this suggests this and sort of says this, but don't trust it to say this, and we can only interpret it in this way. And like the same applies to your data, where it all kind of suggests stuff and things like that. And by like pushing this information out, I think other people start to see it as what it is, which is kind of a best guess of what's happening in the world and or kind of best estimate of what's really going on, as opposed to this like empirical truth that cannot be challenged in any way at all.
I love that.
Sorry, go ahead, Julie.
I also wanted to add in there, I think one of the things that this feature does is it lets someone take that first step in troubleshooting and learning to understand why it's not right, which is so important in that building the trust. It's like, hey, we're on a team and we can learn together and you can figure this out. And that sort of has that shared kind of, we own this together in a way, which is really key for me in reporting as like a one-person analytics team.
So actually on that, so as a one-person analytics team, because you brought that up a couple of times, I wonder if you could talk about that a little bit. So like, what does having DBT and Mode work together? Like, how does that help you as a one-person team?
Tough. I think when you work at smaller companies, there's a lot of changes. There's a lot of changes in data, and you're changing your definition of what is a paid lead, what is our ICP. And prior to having a single source like DBT, where I could change that in one place, push it live, and then it updates all the Mode reports, you have to go in and manually update that categorization in every single one of your Mode reports. You need to update the data in multiple places. Things are going to break. And that admin alone is weeks worth of work, and you're not actually generating any new models, any new reports, any new information. You're just maintaining what existed before. And so having that kind of single source where you fix it once and then it shoots out to everything, and Mode kind of has that nice layer on top of it, it just works so well because I'm not spending hours fixing broken code. And to me, that's a huge win. And it just being able to kind of, a single analytics team, I have two other people that kind of do part-time work. And so DBT is also great because I can make changes in the model that they can then use, and it allows me to be a multiplier. So I'm allowing myself to kind of do work that then makes them 2x, 3x, 4x more efficient, because I've created this model that they now just have to write a single line of code and they can get their answer versus having to do those complex joins. Yeah.
So not just the building of trust, but actually like being a straight up force multiplier, because you can offload certain responsibilities knowing that your data is good and your processes are good. Yeah.
You use our DBT approved models. I've checked it. I have to check one place to make sure it's right. And then I can trust that people can do what they need to do from there.
That's amazing. That is absolutely amazing. And I guess I'll open up also to the entire panel. So kind of a obvious question, right? But like, why is building trust and having that confidence in data across all the teams super important?
Sure. It just underlies so much of the work from I have an interesting lens into this as our head of products. I work with a lot of our different product development squads on even like tracking the events. And I can feel myself being the product manager on the one side saying like, well, let's cut the scope and get the events out the door pretty quickly. And then 2 weeks later, I go to analyze the events. And I'm like, these events are terrible. Who tracked this? So that's a unique position that I'm in. But it's that shared understanding from the folks responsible for generating the data, whether it's in-app events or if it's in Salesforce, just that understanding of how the data is going to be used. And like even informing the data team of we're creating a new thing in Salesforce and this is how it's going to change our existing data. Like it's a two-way street, and sort of trust and mutual understanding between ultimately the data producers and then like say the data modelers and then the folks doing the analysis who might actually be the producers in the first case. It's kind of a big circle, and trust and understanding is at the heart of all of it.
Awesome.
And as a data team, like you're not necessary. Like you don't really do anything necessary for the business. The engineering team can ignore you. The product team can ignore you. The sales team can ignore you. You can't tell an engineer, we don't trust you. They're like, they still got to build the product. You still got to go to them and be like, well, you got to build the thing. Or you can't tell, if you don't trust your sales team at all, there's still the people out there selling the thing. The data team can just be like, well, we'll cut you out of the process. And so like trust is, for a data team in particular, the only thing that gives them any influence. Is if people don't trust you, they'll just leave you out. Like maybe they'll have you there to humor you, but they'll then just ignore the things you tell them, and they can't.
That I feel like there's a story behind that, a lot of stories. But before we get into that really quick, so we have a few more questions left, but I did want to encourage the participants, if you do have any questions for anyone on our panel, please enter those questions into the Q&A segment, and we'll try to get to a few at the end of the presentation. And that Q&A button is available on your Zoom panel. So if you could actually speak to those stories, I guess, I know you may, it sounds like you guys, the team may have some stories where that trust between the sales team, the product team, and the engineering team may have broken down as a result of poor data. Do you guys have any stories to share?
So I have one that's sort of goes beyond the internal effects of this, which is a lot of times, and we have worked, and data teams will work with like customer success organizations who are essentially responsible for working with customers to share data to that customer. Customer will come to you and say, hey, how are we using this product? Or we want information on who's doing what or whatever. And they want to see that. So the customer success team becomes kind of this like in between the data team and the customer, saying, hey, like customers asking for this, we want to support them. We're going through a renewal. We need to show them some stuff. And so the data team serves the customer success team, who serves the customer. And I've seen cases where because of these like data freshness issues or some pipeline issue, what ends up getting served to the customer is wrong. The customer success team kind of vets it a little bit, but they don't really know, so great. So, Steve in accounting is the most active user of the product. I don't know, like, sure, that's what the data says. Why not? They pass to the customer. The customer kind of knows or has some sense of like what's actually right. And they're like, Steve hasn't worked here in 3 months. And so then you're starting to undermine the trust that your customers have in your product, in your team, in your service, and like the whole relationship, that all we asked for was some basic data that seems like it'd be straightforward for you to provide. And you gave me something that I can like look at for 30 seconds and know is wrong. And that's like, again, not only damaging for the data team, but like now the CSM team is like mad because they're going to lose a customer potentially because of it. Like it creates all sorts of problems for the business and for like the relationships in the business, just because, hey, something was out of date or you sent the wrong thing or whatever. And like that stuff cascades in really damaging ways that as Drew said, it takes a bunch of drops to build back up. Like you don't get that from me like, oh, well, here's the right report. Now you trust me again. It's like you get that from 9 months of giving them the exactly perfect thing. And then they might kind of sort of forgive you.
It's a good story and kind of sad, I guess.
Not a good story, James. It's a terrible story.
I said it kind of sad. I added in the kind of sad later. So with that, I'm going to end with Julie. If you could, I guess for our attendees, just speak really briefly on the tips and tricks for preparing your entire team for change. So once you actually implement the integration, first, tell us how long it took. And second, like, how do you actually get other teams ready to start interacting with this new change?
Yeah, so it's actually, for its impact, it's a very simple feature. It's really easy to set it up, get it going. I think, you can write your nicest feature announcement in your Slack, but at this point, we're all aware that those notifications, those announcements tend to get ignored. And I think, in combo with that, the most effective way is just like sitting down when they come to me with this data is wrong, to take that as an opportunity to learn, why they think it is, show them how to use it, and just have them watch me troubleshoot the way that they can now do it themselves. So it's a combo of just, I love those one-on-one conversations with the stakeholders of the reports because it's mutually beneficial. I learn about our customers' use cases. I learn a lot about what's going on and like why the data is doing what it's doing. I see a spike, but I don't really get why that's happening because I don't have the context. So I think as an analyst, one of your kind of like hidden things you should be doing is spending that time when someone says it's broken, is take that as an opportunity to learn. Don't go in defensive. And then I get to show them this new feature so that next time they can click on that and come to me with, hey, Julie, the source isn't loading versus the data is wrong. So that's, it's not a super huge rollout or process. It's just taking the time to speak with people and teach them how to do it on a one-on-one basis.
Very, very important. And thank you for sharing that experience. It's probably the most important thing when you get right down to it, because that's where the rubber meets the road. So yeah, thank you for sharing. So looking at the time, I did want to provide a final opportunity for any of our panelists to speak, and then we'll close things out. So starting with Drew, if you could provide some parting words.
Yeah. Thanks again for having me on today. It was a lot of fun to talk about this integration. We're really excited about this new launch, and also kind of the future of helping take this metadata out of DBT, put it in context. I think Ben and I are going to have some conversation soon about all the other ideas we have in our brains and exciting things we can do in the future. I'll just say, we're really excited about this particular integration. We're also trying to generally solve this problem of like providing metadata about your data warehouse as a service. So this integration is powered by an API on our side. It's available to DBT Cloud customers on like a paid tier. And if you think there are other kinds of use cases for this metadata, there are kind of good ways for you to, tap in there, run queries, look up all the models in a schema or the tests on those models, or if you have other sorts of like compliance or governance use cases, things like that. We're really excited to target those both via integrations and partnerships. And also, if you're going to build stuff yourself, I would love to talk to you about, your use cases and maybe how we can help address them with DBT. So one other very small plug I just want to give is we're doing a kind of product launch event in May. It's called Staging. Is it all right if I dig up a link and kind of drop one in case anyone wants to hear more about what's new and upcoming in DBT Cloud?
Yeah, so this is being recorded. So people will be able to access it after the event, and also we'll send an email as well. So both can work.
Perfect. Well, thanks, everyone.
And Ben?
Thanks for putting this together. This was a fun conversation. We certainly feel appreciative for the things that folks at Fishtown have built, and think that that they're a big part of kind of a big piece of the puzzle of how do we actually go from data kind of being a wild west that it was 10 years ago to something that's relatively robust and easy to use and effective. To Drew's point about kind of the future, and there was a question I saw about kind of thoughts on porting other features over into the Mode UI. Generally, yeah, we now there are two people on the marketing team here for Mode, so I don't want to say anything I'm going to get yelled at for later. But there's generally we see this as kind of a first step of solving the broader problem of how do you know what's happening behind the chart that you're actually looking at. The chart itself is only, that's sort of the end point of a whole bunch of other operations that it takes to get there. That includes kind of the freshness of the data, but it's as Drew said, there's a bunch of other stuff there too. There's actual understanding what are the metrics that you're seeing. There's understanding of what does this data mean? There's understanding of the actual sources of that. Where does it come from? There's semantic understanding of okay, we're looking at ARR, but how do we actually compute all that? All of that sort of stuff is really what's important here. Is you're not ultimately, your question is, hey, is this data fresh? Your question is, should I trust this and what does it mean? This is kind of the first step in that, but we want to eventually get to the point where you can go to something and you can say I don't just understand what this number says. I understand kind of how much I can trust it. I understand what it means semantically for the business. I understand where I can find more information about it. All those sorts of things are really the broader ambition of what this looks like.
And actually, there's a question in that speaks a little bit to the roadmap. And that's also one thing that we don't really talk too much about the roadmap, but I did want to give you the opportunity. So the question is from an anonymous attendee. Any thoughts on porting other DBT features into the Mode UI? For example, DBT test results, exposures, that sort of thing.
We as I said, we kind of built this in some ways a proof point that, hey, we can build these sorts of things and we can start moving information that DBT has into Mode for the same reason that Drew described. It's that's where people are going to consume it. DBT generates all of it and has a ton of valuable information, but it's not that useful if only a handful of people have access to DBT Cloud to actually go to consume it. So there are a number of things like that DBT has, including future stuff that I know they want to build. that we want to try to support. But again, the timing of that and prioritization and all of that is an open question. So yeah, it's certainly stuff we're thinking about, but no promises for anything immediate.
Of course, and of course, always with no roadmaps into the future, but it is certainly something that we're very interested in. And one last question as well. So how could you leverage this new feature to rebuild trust with external stakeholders who don't have access to Mode? And that question could be to really anyone on the panel. I would actually think it might apply to Julie or it might apply to Ben. So whoever would like to take it.
I'm happy to take it. I think without access to Mode, it does make this feature in particular a little bit hard, but I think what it does allow is a broader audience to understand the data freshness and then be able to communicate it to those that they're sharing the information with or sharing the source data with. So it's just a bigger percentage of the company knows how to check how accurate the data is, and that cascades through those who have access or don't.
So the people who have access use it correctly, and they're able to then pass along that information to external stakeholders.
That
Awesome.
would be my use case that I can see it working well with.
To the beginning restaurant analogy, it's like right now, just the people cooking the food know how fresh it is, and like the more of the staff know about it, probably the less likely you're going to serve something bad. But yeah, there's to expose that to external customers, it still counts on somebody in the organization sort of flagging that before it actually hits the customer's table.
Awesome. And I guess we'll round up with Julie yourself. So do you have any parting words for the audience attendees?
Well, I do really appreciate you inviting me to join this. And I think the reason that I love features like this is that maybe they're not as flashy as some of the other features, but they really hit on the problems that data teams have, and they solve kind of that core pain that keeps us up at night. Do people trust this? Do people want to use my reports? So this is a really exciting feature and a great first step in kind of creating that transparency across the team.
Awesome. I mean, you got to have a strong ground game, right? Got to have that strong ground game. So with that, that is the end of our presentation. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, of course, Nancy, who is our audience moderator, as well as thank you, Drew. And if you guys, of course, you guys have provided great models and explanations for everyone who is attending. So thank you so much. And to the audience, thank you for attending this presentation. So with that, I will log off. My name is James, and I wish everyone a great and terrific day.
Thanks, James.